Welcome back to Adventure 207 RC. Today, we're wrestling steers. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Adventure 207. We're here for week number 4 of our Gladiator build series. And no, not that kind of steers. Today, we're wrestling with steering. And we've got some parts here to improve the turning radius of this Gladiator. Now, as I teased last week, we've got the LGRP Extreme CVD axle shafts. I've got the Mofo spring steel axle shafts in the front of my Fugly Truggy. So, decided to go for these ones for the Gladiator just to kind of compare them for myself. And I've got the Mofo black brass steering knuckles. I've got these in the front of my Fugly Truggy. And you can see the full build breakdown on that up here, whichever side it's on, if you want to know more about that particular build. And I've got this Hot Racing black aluminum steering link set that's just been kicking around in the parts bin for a while. Figured I'd finally go ahead and use it. So now, if this is the first video in my Gladiator build series that you've seen, I'm going to tell you to go ahead, hop back to the first one, watch that so you can see how our performance tests are laid out here. And I'm going to put a little card for that up here, whichever side it's going on. Get caught up week 1, 2, and 3 to show you how we got from bone stock to where we are now, what we've improved, how it's improved the performance of the truck to this point. Now, as for this week, essentially the steering in this truck is still stock. We've changed our tires and wheels, and we've swapped out that stock servo for an EcoPower 827. However, our turning radius is still more or less exactly the same. Scrub radius may be a little bit different depending on offset of these wheels versus stock. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and throw the stock wheels and tires back on this truck for now, so we can actually measure out what our turning radius is now versus with all these new parts installed in the front end. Let's do that right now. Alright, so we've got our stock tires and wheels back on. I hate it. They look dinky. I'm used to those Swamp Kings and Trios now, but for the sake of being as objective as possible, we're going to go ahead and use these tires and wheels. So right now, the only steering upgrade in this truck is that servo, but that shouldn't make much of a difference from stock. The endpoints are still fairly close, if not exactly the same. So the way we're going to test this, you can see I've got a masking tape line running down the very outside of the passenger side tires. Tires are straight. We're going to turn the wheel all the way to the driver's side. Then we're just going to slow crawl a 180-degree circle. Then wherever it gets to 180 degrees, a little bit more, right there. We're just going to turn the wheels back straight. And then we'll mark down the outside of the passenger side tires again with some masking tape and measure our turning circle. So hopefully you can see it there pretty good. The GoPro's trying to do some stupid stuff with the horizon leveling, but we are right at about 30 1/16 inches on our turning circle. So now we're going to go ahead, throw all those new front end parts in this thing, start from the same tape line, do the same steering process, then we'll measure up where we're at now and see what our improvement is. Alright, so we've got our new front end parts in there. Hopefully you can see them somewhat kind of decent. Now, I decided to not do full install how-tos on all these parts this week, just to try to keep these videos as short as possible. I mean, it's all pretty straightforward, self-explanatory, easy stuff. But while I was in there and I had everything all apart, I went ahead and did a little free mod to the axle housing. Can you see what it is? I'll throw a photo in here of kind of a before and after, side by side. I actually took my Dremel and I hogged away at the knuckle openings and essentially converted this axle housing from a closed knuckle to a C-knuckle style, just to maximize the potential steering ability of these CVDs, because that's one of your biggest limiting factors with stock steering on these rigs, is the way the ends of the axles are designed. Now, time will tell how rugged this ends up being, and if and when I end up breaking one side or the other of this axle housing. I've got other stock housings I can just throw back in it, so it's not a big deal. Now, one thing I've also done is I have swapped the top of the shocks around and just popped them off the balls, spun them, stuck them back on, because I got a feeling we're going to need the extra room back here for steering angle to be able to leave the shocks mounted where they are. Otherwise, the tires are just going to hit on that fake reservoir. Now, you could go ahead and just snip that off with a pair of side cutters or whatever, and that'd be fine, but for now, that's good enough. So, let's go ahead and get this thing back out on the floor and see where our steering angle's at now. Now, real quick before I throw this thing on the floor, another thing I did to maximize steering angle is I dropped the bolt for our drag link down to the bottom hole. If you remember from when we installed this servo, I had it one hole up from the bottom. Now, that had no impact on the way this was set up with all the stock steering parts up here, because the knuckles were already bottoming out on the axle shaft as it was. But now, where we've clearanced the axle shaft and we've got the CVDs in there, I've gone ahead and dropped it down to the bottom hole just to maximize our potential. So let's go ahead and get it on the floor here. Get it lined up as best as I can to where we started our initial test. Just like before, full lock to the driver's side and a nice slow crawl. And now, another thing that could potentially help the turning radius is an overdrive in the front axle, which will be coming eventually, most likely not in this build series, but look at that. A little bit too far. Good enough. We'll go ahead and throw our new tape line down and measure it out. Alright, so before, with all the stock steering parts, we were at about 30 and 1/16 of an inch. Now we're at just about 25.5 inches. So we've taken a little more than 4.5 inches off of the diameter of the turning circle on this thing, just by throwing some CVDs and new knuckles and trimming down that axle shaft. So now, let's go ahead, hop back on the bench, check how our weights are doing now with that extra brass up front, and then we'll hit the crawler course. Alright, so obviously we have drastically improved our steering angle on this Gladiator this week. As far as other mods, we've gained about another 15 grams. We're up to a total of 419 now. Compared to bone stock, we are at 267. And we've also drastically improved our weight bias. Remember, we started with a 55% rear weight bias. We have now completely flipped that to a 55% front weight bias. Now, unsurprisingly, our RTI score is still the same as it has been for the past couple of weeks. 2 inches of flex. Can't expect that to change with the mods we've been doing the past couple of weeks. However, next week, it is going to change. Next week, we'll be doing one of the mods that I've been most excited for, and we'll be using this little package from Hot Racing. But for now, let's go ahead, take this Gladiator, we'll hit the indoor course, and we'll see what that new steering radius has done for us. Alright, so let's go ahead and see how fast we can blaze through these 5 lines now. I don't think we're going to see much of a difference on most of these lines, but I'm thinking we will see a little bit of a difference on that hard right-hand turn on line 2 and maybe at the top of line 3, because now we've got so much steering angle, these front tires are literally rubbing the lower links at full lock. So once again, line 1 stays a P1. Let's see. Definitely notice the steering improvement on line 2. So with that 050 motor, we are just able to blaze through these obstacles now. Even with a half-dead battery. And I mean, that new tighter turning radius is really helping when we need to hunt for traction. Alright, so far everything has stayed a P1 just like we had last week. And I don't know how much it's showing up on camera, but I can tell you as far as drivability goes and being able to hunt for traction, that new tighter turning radius has definitely been an improvement. Still amazes me watching this thing just climb right up over that. I cannot wait to see what this thing does next week once we get those hot racing long travel shocks in it. Alright, so steering mods this week for stage number 4. I mean, the results really speak for themselves on that turning radius test. This thing is drastically improved from where it was, to the point that now the endpoints on the servo are set for the endpoints on the servo. I mean, I've got this thing cranked out to where the steering dual rate on my transmitter is not even doing anything anymore. I've clicked it as far as it will go. Nothing's hitting as far as knuckles on axle anymore. Now the only interference problems we have are, like I said, the tires actually hitting the lower links. So, we're not going to get much better than that out of this thing. Yeah, I think a front overdrive would definitely help to bring that turning radius down just a little bit more, especially on softer terrain, make the front end pull a little harder. But at this point, I don't really think that's a necessary mod. It's definitely something that's going to be done eventually outside of this build series. That's a mod I've done to almost all of my other trucks. Well worth the money for the performance gain that you get as far as I'm concerned. But just to recap how far we've come from this thing from week 1. I mean, bone stock, we were at 267 grams with a 55% rear weight bias, 51% left weight. We've evened out that left-right bias to a near perfect 50-50. We shed quite a bit of weight in week 1, getting rid of that overlanding setup off the back to try to lower the center of gravity and move a little bit of weight towards the front. We were able to balance that front-rear bias out to 50-50. Week 2, tires and wheels. Those heavy brass trio wheels, man. I mean, these tires and wheels are something like 52 or 53 grams a piece mounted. So, I mean, we've got over 200 grams of weight just in the wheel and tire package on this thing, compared to 224 grams as it sat bone stock with weight savings. So, I mean, we've got almost as much weight in tires and wheels as what the whole rest of the truck weighed stock with the stock tires and wheels on it. So, last week, threw that Mofo 050 torque beast in there. The EcoPower 827 servo. Moved a little more weight around. We got our front bias up to 53%. Brought our total weight up to 403.9 grams. This week, we increased that another 15.1 grams to 419, and now we're sitting at a 55% front weight bias. So far, we haven't made any more improvements on the flexibility of the suspension. We're still sitting at that 2 inches of flex that we saw with our week 1 modifications, just moving the shocks around. As I said, next week, we've got those 43mm hot racing shocks going in this thing. I'm going to try my best to mount them the way these shocks are mounted, and I'll probably throw these stock springs in them, at least for now, just to keep our ride height similar. But I can't wait to see how much flex they add and how much that translates to stability and performance on the course. So make sure you check back next week to see that as we go into stage 5. There's only 3 weeks left on this build series. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of the series. Thanks for watching.